The day the stars turned hostile began with a whisper on the long-range scanners orbiting Europa. A strange electromagnetic pulse, tightly coded and encrypted in a dialect last seen a century ago, pinged once, and then nothing. Commander Elias Kerr, stationed aboard the Earth Defense Platform Aegis 17, dismissed it as solar interference, a common occurrence in Jupiter's harsh magnetic belts. But deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, inside the Earth Strategic Intelligence Core, the signal was received with recognition. The machine that registered it, known simply as Hera, had no emotion, but its ancient red alert protocol spun into motion for the first time since the Martian uprising. The Council of Supremacy, a self-declared galactic authority formed by the elder races of Silari, Threxan, and Gu, had grown increasingly wary of Earth's sudden technological leap. In less than 2 centuries, humans had not only developed faster-than-light capability, but had begun to terraform dead moons, outpace genetic barriers, and weaponize quantum fields. To the older species, who took millennia to crawl from primitive forms to governance, this was not progress. It was heresy. Worse, humans did it without permission, without reverence, and without fear. A conference had been held in secret orbit around the Black Star Nebula. No humans were invited. Delegates spoke not of diplomacy, but of elimination. "Human adaptability is a virus," spat the Threxan High Marshal, his spines clicking with fury. "If we wait another cycle, they'll redefine war." The Gu Chancellor, a bulbous being of methane and memory, floated silently until he uttered a single sentence in universal tongue. "Let the flame cleanse the root." The vote was swift. 13 races agreed, 1 abstained, none opposed. Operation Celestial Purge was authorized. The attack was not signaled with ships or weapons, but with silence. At precisely 0000 Standard Galactic Time, Earth lost contact with its outer colonies. The orbital rings around Kepler 62 CE flickered out first. Then the Mars installation stopped broadcasting. A stream of static replaced the lively chatter of Vesta's mining hubs. On Earth, alarms began to rise. General Mariah Voss, head of Earth's Interstellar Defense Initiative, was in mid-briefing when her holoscreen collapsed into error. She rose slowly, listening not to words, but to what was missing. No chatter from the Luna Watch Station, no traffic from the Saturn outposts, not even distress beacons. Only silence, and silence was never innocent. In the following hours, Earth witnessed its skies burn. Above Beijing, 4 shimmering black obelisks pierced the clouds. Each was a Threxan annihilation prism, capable of bending gravity into a focused beam that could turn a city into liquid heat. Entire districts evaporated. No warning, no demand, just death. In Africa, strange spores rained down near the Great Rift Basin. Children who inhaled them collapsed in convulsions, their lungs liquefying in minutes. Hospitals overflowed. Then they too went dark. The oceans fared no better. The Gu deployed kinetic warheads that detonated just above sea level, creating waves that drowned whole islands. In space, orbital defense arrays were shredded by invisible slicer drones. Every automated defense Earth had relied on, satellites, space cannons, even deep shield pulses, failed. Someone had studied them thoroughly, someone had prepared, and amidst it all, no messages were sent, no demands made. The Council wanted no surrender, it wanted erasure. Within 48 hours, the death toll was estimated at 99 million, and that number climbed every time a signal reached the central bunker in Iceland. President Rao, secluded in the underground citadel known as Civitas Zero, stood pale and motionless, her hands trembling as she scrolled through loss reports. New York, vaporized. Lagos, infected. Buenos Aires, cratered. There were no patterns, no logic, just overwhelming, simultaneous annihilation. She turned to General Voss, voice thin. Are we extinct? Voss shook her head. Not yet. Her tone carried something cold, buried. A memory, perhaps. A fear returned. Deep within the Arctic vaults, inside the Earth's Strategic Intelligence Core, known only to a dozen living people, Protocol R was triggered. Red folders unlocked. Names that hadn't been spoken in decades reappeared on the encrypted screens, and two words flashed in blood-red letters: Unleash Demons. President Rao stared. What the hell is that? Voss didn't answer. Instead, she moved to the console and placed her hand on the genetic reader. A silent hum passed through her bones. It's what we were never supposed to use, she said. But we never expected this. The vault's secondary screen displayed two classified cryogenic codes. Project Boogeyman, status, dormant, location, Deep Lock 9A, Colorado Territory, Baba Yaga contingency, status, dormant, location, Black Ice Facility, Irkutsk Range. These weren't weapons. These weren't armies. These were people, or what had once been people, Earth's final cards. Decades ago, as Earth transitioned from chaos to peace, certain individuals had emerged who couldn't adapt to stability. They had been too efficient, too ruthless, forged in fire and blood. Men and women who had ended wars by walking alone into enemy territory and ensuring it never rose again. Governments tried to imprison them. It didn't work. So they were frozen, not executed. That would be wasteful. They were sealed, categorized as unusable assets, monsters in reserve. But now, humanity had nothing to lose. Voss tapped both activation keys. The systems hesitated as if the AI itself questioned the decision. Then the cryo seals hissed. Somewhere beneath the Rocky Mountains, a red light blinked in a chamber where a man named John Creel, known to military lore as Boogeyman, lay in frozen sleep, his heartbeat slow but steady. In Russia's coldest mountain shadow, another red light blinked. Inside a chamber reinforced with psychic wards and lead walls, a woman known only as Anya Volkova, Baba Yaga, stirred beneath her frost-stained mask. Earth had no fleets left, no colonies to rally, no reinforcements, but it had something worse than vengeance. It had purpose, and two sleeping myths who had never forgotten how to kill. The wind howled through the Colorado Badlands as black snow drifted over the abandoned terrain above Deep Lock 9A. From the surface, it looked like nothing, just another forgotten installation from a war-long past, encased in dust and silence. But far beneath the frozen rock, where light had not touched steel for decades, ancient machinery stirred. Hydraulic bolts, silent for 50 years, hissed and groaned as oxygen was pumped into the chamber at a controlled rate. Blue cryo mist spilled across the cold floor, curling like ghostly fingers around the metal cradle that held the man known as Boogeyman. John Creel's heart rate ticked upward from its artificial flatline. The tubes embedded in his skin, pale and marked with scar tissue, retracted one by one, their mechanical suckers snapping away with soft pops. He did not awaken like a man, but like an animal returning to an environment that had once belonged to him. His fingers twitched first, then his neck shifted with painful stiffness. He opened his eyes slowly, and the iris scanners above confirmed the worst fears of every galaxy that had once recorded his name. Subject Creel was conscious. There was no alarm. The system had been programmed to remain silent upon his revival. Noise startled him. Instead, a green beam lit the floor with a path. He rose without hesitation, barefoot on the cold steel, every step echoing with strange calm. He did not speak. He never did unless required. The Boogeyman had been designed through selective trauma, his mind molded by warfare, refined by isolation, and sealed through 37 classified missions that each resulted in extinction-level outcomes for hostile entities. He was not a soldier. He was the last page of the rule book. As he walked toward the debriefing chamber, His muscular frame passed walls lined with cameras. A hidden voice, female, familiar to him even in sleep, began to speak through the intercom. "John," the AI known as Kaylee began, "you have been awakened under Protocol R. Humanity has lost global contact. 99 million are confirmed dead. Earth is under siege. You have permission to operate at Omega Authority." He blinked once. "You are not alone," the voice continued. "The Baba Yaga is being prepared." His eyes narrowed. That name struck something ancient in him. Not fear, not hatred, just respect. He had never met her face to face. But during the Balkan Firestorm campaign, he had read her field reports. Surgical, silent, cold beyond measurement. She was the only living asset whose kill count eclipsed his, and she never left witnesses. Thousands of miles away, inside the black ice facility buried in the Irkutsk range, the process was less clinical. The Russian installation had not been maintained as well as its American counterpart. Dust coated the sealed doors. Backup generators coughed to life only after 2 manual overrides. But the cold had kept her intact. Inside the reinforced containment pod, Anya Volkova lay with her arms folded across her chest, as if sleeping in defiance. Her body had not aged. Her heartbeat, once measured at under 30 beats per minute, slowly crawled into normalcy as the freezing fluid drained from her lungs. Her eyes remained shut. The attending officer, Major Lev Orlov, watched from behind 3 layers of ballistic glass. He held the activation command in his trembling hands. "Do we speak to her?" he asked into the headset. "No," replied the base commander from the observation deck. "You never speak to her first. Let her speak when she's ready." The lights flickered. When they returned, she was already sitting upright. Anya did not panic. She did not cough or gasp. She simply inhaled once, deep and quiet. The moment her feet touched the floor, the internal temperature of the chamber began to drop. Not mechanically, but through sheer force of subconscious will. She walked toward the mirror pane that separated her from the command crew. Her breath did not fog the glass. She looked at her reflection with a kind of disappointment. Then she turned to face the 2 men behind the wall and tilted her head slightly. "What happened?" she asked. The translator glitched for a second, unsure how to render the frigid tone. Major Orlov stuttered. "Earth is under attack. Nearly destroyed. You've been recalled. Contingency active." Her lips parted into the faintest curve of a smile. "Good." She walked past the containment boundary and into the locker unit where her uniform had been waiting for 43 years. Black combat suit, frost-resistant, embedded with nanofiber strings designed for full environmental adaptation. The holster was empty. She didn't need a weapon. She was the weapon. Both John and Anya were extracted from their respective locations within hours. He boarded a stealth cruiser that broke the sound barrier, leaving Colorado. She commandeered an old Russian Blackbird jet, refitted for orbital launch, and demanded the crew remain behind. Her voice had that effect, commanding and final. In low orbit above Earth, a Black-class stealth vessel awaited both assets. The ship, nicknamed the Ghost, had been constructed for one purpose: extraction and delivery of Omega-level operators into hostile environments. Inside, there were no pilots, only automatic systems and 2 chairs facing each other. John arrived first. He strapped in, silent, still drying cryofluid from his neck. When Anya entered, her eyes met his. Neither blinked. Neither spoke for 20 seconds. Then she sat down. "You're shorter than I imagined," she said. He nodded. "You're colder than the record said." Her smile faded. "This isn't a mission." He looked out the porthole. "Number, it's a message." In the silence that followed, the ship crossed over Earth's scorched equator. Burning cities and fractured landscapes sprawled beneath them like torn skin. The ship's internal AI delivered coordinates in rapid succession, confirmed locations of the Council's forces still operating near Venus, Saturn's moons, and deep orbital space near the Kuiper line. "Primary targets are still active," Cayley's voice reported. "Supremacy fleets remain near Martian orbit. Secondary deployments exist across exoplanet colonies. 0 diplomatic channels remain open." John stood. "Drop point?" "Anywhere," the AI said. "You are cleared for full discretion." Anya also stood, adjusting her gloves. "We'll start with the fleet over Mars," she said. He raised an eyebrow. Crowded. She tilted her head. "Let them watch." They exited the chamber and stepped into the pod chamber. The drop bay opened like a mouth beneath them. Suit magnetics engaged. Weapons, if desired, could be printed mid-drop. But neither of them chose weapons. Their fists, minds, and instincts were sharper than any blade. They fell from orbit like comets, silent, dark, targeted. As the ghost vessel sealed behind them and vanished into the shadow of Earth's night side, the galaxy's deadliest duo descended upon the war zone. And for the first time since the purge began, the enemies of Earth would feel something they hadn't anticipated: dread. Not because they faced armies or ships or nukes, but because humanity had just opened the vault and let out the monsters. The Martian sky had never seen war like this. Crimson clouds swirled above Olympus Mons as the Council's warships hovered in low orbit, casting shadows that blanketed entire sectors of the surface colonies. The fleet, composed of Threxan hammer cruisers, goo hive carriers, and Silari prism frigates, patrolled with arrogance. Their mission was no longer conquest, it was occupation. Mars had fallen, and the survivors had been enslaved, dissected, or erased. Patrol teams in biomechanical armor marched through the red corridors of what had once been New Elysium, executing curfews and suppressing resistance with drone squads. The atmosphere was dry, but the air smelled like metal and ash. The officers aboard the central dreadnought, Crixus Vale, were not concerned. The goo admiral who commanded the fleet hovered in a nutrient pod, surrounded by a triad of interpreters. He was reviewing sterilization data from Titan when one of the bridge officers interrupted him. The goo disliked interruptions. His eye stalks rotated slowly toward the younger drone. "Unidentified objects descending from orbit," the drone said, its mandibles twitching. "2 signatures. No heat trail. No propulsion. Organic mass confirmed." "Junk," the admiral croaked. "Martian debris. Ignore." The drone hesitated. "They are accelerating." That was the last moment of peace aboard the Crixus Vol. John struck first. His landing was not graceful. It was violent. He came down like a meteor onto the hull of the lowest patrol ship, punching through its plating as if it were paper. The internal vacuum sucked 2 pilots out before the emergency shields activated. By then, John was already inside. He moved without hesitation, breaking necks with a twist, disabling gravity with a single code pulse he implanted directly into the command terminal. He didn't need a weapon. His body was honed into one. When the ship listed sideways and alarms wailed, he was already gone, ejected toward the next. Anya landed silently inside the Martian atmosphere, using her suit's adaptive threads to glide just above the surface like a black ghost. She entered the colony's perimeter unnoticed, her presence masked by the Council's own surveillance glitches, which she had seeded into their grid during the fall. The patrol team that spotted her lasted 12 seconds. Her hand struck one in the throat. Her boot crushed another's spine against the wall. The last tried to run but never reached the alarm panel. He died with his eyes wide open, never seeing her face. Within the hour, whispers began to spread among the Council's troops. Commanders tried to keep it quiet. They failed. Someone was boarding ships without airlocks. Someone was moving between sectors faster than transit drones. Cameras showed blurry frames, a shadow moving at angles that didn't obey physics. One video, confiscated immediately, showed a goo soldier floating in zero-G, spinning in slow circles, mouth open. On closer inspection, his tongue had been surgically removed. He had died of fear before his lungs collapsed. On the second night, a Threxan lieutenant managed to wound Anya. He was fast. He was armed with plasma claws designed to pierce neutron armor. He struck her across the back. Her suit burned, and blood soaked through the seam. She didn't react. She turned, grabbed his lower jaw, and pulled. The scream echoed across 6 decks before the audio systems overloaded. His squad found what was left of him nailed to the wall with one of his own ribs. No one tried to avenge him. Meanwhile, John was working through the fleet methodically. He entered ships through cargo bays, maintenance tunnels, or simply by ramming escape pods into docking clamps and emerging from the smoke. He didn't use the ship's own weapons. He disabled them, turned them into traps. One cruiser was found drifting, its crew unconscious from a gas leak that hadn't triggered alarms. On re-entry, it exploded. Onboard footage later revealed a figure standing in the hangar, watching quietly, moments before the detonation. The Council's Central Command attempted a coordinated strike. 7 ships converging on a location where John's signal had last been traced. It was a trap. He let them come. He rerouted power from a decommissioned relay station into a mining drone field and used gravitational slingshots to collapse 2 of the ships into each other. The rest were disabled by electromagnetic pulses he hand-delivered using timed boosters. The final ship exploded from the inside, its reactor core having been overwritten by a sequence of commands written in a language no alien had ever seen. Sanskrit. No one ever discovered how he had learned it. The fear spread to the officers. Meetings became shorter. Officers carried sidearms in secure zones. The phrase "Boogeyman is here" began to show up in encrypted panic messages. Officers asked for reassignment. Some took their own lives in silence. Anya did not seek to match John in destruction. She operated differently. She left symbols, a child's toy beside a corpse, a handprint made in ash on a command console, a line of blood drawn in perfect circles on the ceiling of a barracks. No message, just presence. She entered the cloning wing of the Martian research facility without alert. 37 scientists inside were working on hybridizing human DNA with Solari biothread. She shut down the oxygen. Not all died quickly. Before leaving, she left behind a single sentence burned into the laboratory's wall using a plasma torch. "You will never know where the real monsters come from." On the 4th night, the Council's admiral attempted evacuation. His pod launched with full escort toward the orbital gate. John intercepted them mid-flight. He ejected from a support vessel with no weapons, no propulsion, just a timed vector. He crashed through the lead escort ship's cockpit and tore the pilot out with his bare hands. He never slowed. He leapt from the wreckage to the admiral's pod, pried open the hatch before the airlock could seal, and entered. The pod was found the next day drifting above the Martian pole. The admiral was missing. In his seat was a handwritten message, written in blood. "We don't want your apology. We want silence." That was the end of Martian control. The supremacy forces that had once claimed Mars as a symbol of dominance now abandoned it like a haunted tomb. Communications from the outer planets reflected it. Ships began retreating from Earth's orbit. Not because they were losing, but because something worse than war had arrived. The galaxy had not prepared for this. It had prepared for rebellion, for uprising, for retaliation, but not for myth. John and Anya did not speak during their extraction. Their pods reconnected above the Martian sky as the fleet behind them dissolved into chaos. Inside, they stood facing opposite walls. She sat cross-legged on the floor, cleaning blood from her gloves. He stood with his arms crossed, staring at the hull as if it offended him. The onboard AI broke the silence. "Report complete. Martian fleet neutralized. Next target. The command spire on Cygnus 5. She spoke first. They're scared. He nodded. Good. Let's teach the rest. And with those quiet words, the ship turned toward the next destination. Behind them, the Martian night was darker than ever, but finally silent. The command spire on Cygnus 5 rose like a monolith from a black desert, its crystalline skin pulsing with a soft blue glow under the twin moons. It was not just a base, it was a symbol. Every war treaty and directive issued by the Supremacy had passed through its halls. Inside, on the uppermost tier, the remaining High Counselors gathered in tense silence. The loss of Mars had been catastrophic, not in military terms, but in morale. The Martian fleet had not merely been defeated, it had disappeared in ways that no military doctrine could explain. Officers refused to speak aloud the names of those responsible. Instead, they used euphemisms: the ghosts, the forsaken, the silent duo. But every counselor knew the truth. The monsters Earth had buried were now awake. Chancellor Korun, head of the Solari delegation, stood at the center of the chamber with her claws clasped behind her back. Her voice echoed off the obsidian walls as she addressed the remaining fleet admirals and governors via projection. "We must abandon Earth," she said. "Its population is fractured. Its defenses are scattered. But it is not military resistance we face anymore. It is vengeance. It is surgical. Personal. We are being dismantled." A Threxan warlord rose from his seat, his bone armor clicking with movement. "So we bow. After everything? We cowered before the Hive Wars, and now we do it again because of 2 Terran anomalies?" "This is not cowardice," Korun replied. "This is survival." He hissed in defiance, but he did not object further. While the debate raged above, Anya was already inside. She had entered the perimeter 6 hours earlier, submerged in one of the acidic swamps east of the structure. Her suit had dissolved in the process. She left it behind, naked under the night sky, and entered the outer vents through a maintenance shaft forgotten by the current crew. Once inside, she fashioned clothing from abandoned supplies and moved through the sublevels with the patience of a shadow. She did not kill immediately. She waited. She listened. She found the rhythm of the spire, shift changes, blind spots, overheard passwords. When the first body was found, it was mistaken for a suicide. A junior technician had slit his own throat in the archives chamber, though no weapon was found. An hour later, another corpse appeared, frozen in a coolant tank, lungs crystallized from the inside. Still, no alarms sounded. The command spire operated under the assumption of complete internal control. That assumption began to crumble when the communications center shut down. Entire sectors of the galaxy went dark within seconds. Dozens of allied systems cried out through emergency channels. No answers came. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, a single phrase appeared on the central screen of the war protocol deck. "Hello again." Anya stood at the center of the observatory dome. Her body was bloodied, her breathing slow and deliberate. She had climbed 75 floors without detection. She had left behind 29 corpses, none of which would be found in the same condition. She stared up at the stars, not in awe, but in calculation. Then the spire shook. John had not arrived through stealth. He came through the front gate. The outer defense platforms engaged immediately. Turrets, drones, sentry walls, but none were enough. He moved like a machine with purpose. Every blast he absorbed was returned with kinetic force. He used a crushed patrol vehicle as a shield, pushing forward like a juggernaut. The outer wall collapsed as he entered the atrium, flames at his back, eyes locked on the security monitors. One of the guards, a young Sillery officer who had once trained in anti-human strategy, saw him coming. He didn't raise his weapon. He froze. He had been shown footage of John during training. He had laughed at the exaggerated stories. Now the real thing stood before him. And in the half-second before John broke his ribs, the young officer whispered, "He's real." The High Council chamber went into emergency lockdown. Panic gripped every floor as alarms howled across the spire. Evacuation pods fired wildly into the sky. Some collided mid-air, others were shot down by their own defense systems, overridden remotely. No one could explain how the override happened. But Korun knew. She didn't speak as her aides screamed around her. She simply activated the Emergency Core Destruct Protocol. Protocol null. Nothing happened. The console rejected the command with one line. Denied. Earth retains authority. She staggered backward. Anya arrived first. She stepped through the smoke into the council chamber with a grace that felt ceremonial. Her eyes scanned the room. Korun raised her weapon, trembling. "You've come for revenge?" Korun hissed. Anya shook her head. "I've come for you." The chamber sealed. Outside, screams echoed from every corridor as John worked through the final resistance. He fought without pause. His movements were brutal, efficient, bones shattered, exosuits crumpled, command units torn apart with mechanical focus. He reached the security core and uploaded a coded virus into the central network, a virus written in a forgotten Earth dialect that no alien algorithm could decipher. Lights flickered. All council data was wiped in less than 4 seconds. 100 years of strategic archives vanished into silence. Inside the chamber, Korun tried to reason with Anya. She offered surrender. She offered territory, power, even blood. Anya said nothing. Instead, she took one step forward and whispered in a language no longer spoken on Earth. The room dropped into silence. Korun collapsed to her knees, clutching her skull. Her last sight was Anya's face, calm, expressionless, and impossibly human. The spire was consumed in white fire minutes later. John triggered the detonation sequence using the core fission converter he had rigged manually. He didn't warn the survivors. He didn't broadcast a signal. He and Anya exited through the gravity shaft moments before the blast. From orbit, the command spire looked like a dying star, collapsing in on itself before exploding outward in a ring of debris that spread across the desert plain. The ghost vessel picked them up in the outer atmosphere. No words were spoken during re-entry. Anya sat beside John in silence, blood drying on her arms. He stared at the floor, his breathing slow, his thoughts unreadable. The AI voice returned. Supremacy Council dismantled, remaining factions in disarray. Orders? Anya answered first. Begin the spiral, John nodded. No survivors. The AI's tone darkened. Confirmed. Initiating reckoning protocol. Next stop, Varn Axis. Estimated purge time, 23 hours. As the stars shifted before them and the remnants of the spire scattered across Cygnus 5, the galaxy finally understood that this was no longer a war. It was a reckoning, and it had only just begun. The Varn Axis was not a world, but a convergence, a megastructure the size of a planet suspended in the folds of space between two ancient black holes. Constructed by the oldest of the supremacy races, it served as the administrative and economic backbone of the Interstellar Alliance. Within its layered rings, millions of inhabitants lived, governed, and enforced the Council's decrees. What remained of the supremacy's hierarchy now clung to this last bastion, desperate to preserve order amid the collapse. In the days following the destruction of the command spire, transmissions from across the galaxy grew quiet. Entire fleets abandoned their patrols. Planetary governors resigned en masse. Embassies once decorated with flags of pride now flew them upside down in silent distress. But it was the silence from Cygnus 5 that terrified the most. The broadcast blackout wasn't technical, it was psychological. Every commander knew that if the spire had truly fallen, then Earth was no longer bleeding. Earth was hunting, Inside the inner sanctum of the Varn Axis, Chancellor Virene of the Threxan species summoned an emergency summit. The chamber was filled with leaders who no longer led, surrounded by advisors who could no longer advise. Holograms flickered around the council table, each bearing the flickering faces of species who had once mocked Earth's ambition. Now their eyes held something raw, panic, stripped of pride. Virene stood at the head of the table, armor polished, voice sharpened to hide the tremor beneath. "We underestimated the humans," he began. "We treated them as unpredictable anomalies. But this—" He paused, exhaling through clenched jaws. "This is extinction in slow motion." No one interrupted. He tapped a clawed finger on the table, and the room dimmed. The holograms were replaced with a single image, grainy, static-filled surveillance footage of a man standing over the wreckage of a Solari destroyer. The image zoomed slowly. John's figure was shrouded in smoke, one hand clutching a bloodied helmet. His face remained unreadable, motionless, as if absorbing the weight of the moment without emotion. "Boogeyman?" a voice whispered. "Not anymore," Virene answered. "Now he's retribution." Moments later, another screen appeared. This time, a still image of Anya standing in a corridor lit only by emergency red. Around her lay the twisted bodies of a patrol squad. She was barefoot, calm, one hand raised as if silencing the very concept of sound. The room watched in silence. One of the Varn security ministers looked away. "She does not kill for necessity," he said. "She kills with language." "Are they headed here?" asked a Solari noble. "They are already en route," Virene said grimly. "Our sensors registered a disruption near the Andari Rift. A ghost ship passed through without identification. It matched no known energy signatures. We believe it was the same vessel responsible for orbital incursions above Mars and Cygnus 5. The silence that followed was not for debate. It was the sound of minds calculating the end. One of the younger counselors, a representative of the Halari Confederation, stood up, trembling. "We cannot fight this." "No," Virene admitted. "We cannot." For the first time in recorded supremacy history, the chamber passed a unanimous resolution, unconditional negotiation. An encoded transmission was crafted, old dialect, Terran core linguistics. It carried no demands, no reasoning, only one line. "Earth, we surrender. Tell us what remains." It was sent blindly into the void, broadcast across all human-accessible channels. No confirmation arrived, no signal. The galaxy waited. 42 hours later, the Varn Axis sensors triggered. The Ghost arrived without introduction. It did not ask for docking codes. It bypassed the outer defenses as if they were non-existent. Drones sent to intercept simply shut down in mid-flight. The ship docked directly into the upper Citadel ring, an area restricted even from Council warlords. Its landing was so silent that most only realized it had arrived once it was too late. Anya exited first. She wore no armor, no visible weapons. Only a black coat streaked with ash and blood. Her hair was pulled back, her expression unreadable. Behind her came John, dressed in a simple combat suit, arms bare, knuckles scarred. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The guards at the reception hall stepped aside without command. Virene awaited them in the central rotunda, standing alone under the stained glass dome that depicted the Supremacy's founding. When he saw her eyes, he dropped to one knee. Not in reverence. In survival. "I am the highest voice left," he said quietly. "Speak your will." John stepped forward. "Where's the council?" Virene gestured weakly toward the inner chamber. "Awaiting judgment." John walked past him without acknowledgement. Anya followed. Inside, 21 counselors stood in a circle, each with a biometric transmitter pressed to their wrist, ready to self-terminate if necessary. She looked at each of them. Her voice carried clearly. Earth will not destroy you. That would be merciful. You will live, and you will witness what you tried to erase." The counselors said nothing. None dared. John stepped into the center of the circle. No alliances, no demands, no conversations. He raised a small device, an Earth relic, analog, rusted. He placed it on the table. The audio hissed to life. It was a recording of a child laughing. The sound filled the room with something none of them expected: shame. It echoed off the walls like a memory they had no right to hold. Some turned away. Others closed their eyes. "You killed 99 million of us," Anya said. "We resurrected only 2. John met her gaze. That was enough. Outside, across the galactic core, systems flickered as a new protocol spread through the ancient networks once guarded by the Supremacy. It was not a weapon. It was a lock. Earth had rewritten the access codes. From that moment forward, any ship bearing Supremacy tags required Earth's clearance to jump between sectors. No weapon could fire without Earth's biometric override. All remaining colonies established diplomatic ties under Earth's watch, not as conquerors, but as custodians of restraint. The Treaty of Varn was not signed with pen or oath. It was acknowledged with silence. The ghost departed just as it had arrived, wordless. John returned to his chair, eyes heavy. Anya stood at the viewport, watching the stars ripple by. "Do you think they understand now?" he asked. "No," she answered, "but they fear, and that is enough for peace." He nodded, and Earth, broken yet alive, drifted forward into a future shaped not by diplomacy, but by the quiet terror of what had once been unleashed, and the knowledge that it could be again. The monsters had returned to sleep. But the galaxy would never forget their names.